Good morning and welcome to Valley Focus. I'm your host, Deborah LeRae. I have a couple of special ladies with me this morning. Jennifer Morris is here. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Deborah.
You're a pregnancy counselor with Catholic Charities.
Yes, I am.
Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning, didn't I?
I try.
Well, thank you. I thank you for taking out the time today. And Alicia O'Loughlin is here. You're the program manager, correct?
I am.
Now, the particular program that you guys are here to talk about today is PPA, which is Pregnancy, Parenting, and Adoption, correct?
That is correct.
Now, we want to focus specifically on pregnancy counseling today. But before we get into that, Catholic Charities does a myriad of things. There's a plethora of programs that are operated through Catholic Charities. Most of them, I believe, are focused to help our communities most vulnerable, most at risk. Usually there's no cost involved to the person who's getting help. It doesn't matter what your faith is. You don't have to be Catholic to get help from Catholic Charities, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And this has all been going on since
1933.
1933. Holy cow. Way before either any of us were thought of, right?
Way before.
Way before.
How many people do you think have so far been impacted in the state through the region, the communities that are serviced by Catholic Charities?
Throughout central and northern Arizona last year was almost 100,000 lives touched.
That's just last year.
Just last year.
So if you multiply that since 1933, that's a lot of lives. A lot of people.
Lives.
Wow. Some of the programs that are operated through Catholic Charities are homeless outreach, shelter, and housing. There's domestic violence and abuse. I've had those ladies in before. Poverty reduction. If we have refugees that are being accepted in our communities from war-torn countries or whatever, they can get assistance through Catholic Charities.
Absolutely.
But today we're going to talk about pregnancy counseling. I have friends who've adopted through Catholic Charities in the past, so I know what wonderful things can happen with Catholic Charities, and that's very cool. So I'm going to throw it to you, Jennifer.
Yes.
Because you're a counselor, right?
I'm the pregnancy counselor, yes.
So you really have your work cut out for you.
Sometimes, yes. Yes,
Is
I
it
do.
challenging?
It is. It's a bittersweet job, and it can be very challenging, but it's also very rewarding, and we're all very dedicated to it, and I really love what I do.
I would imagine that it's very emotional.
Yes.
Because you're talking about a very important decision, a life-altering decision that a young woman is making.
Yes. And whatever she decides, whether she decides to parent or decides to place her child for adoption, both decisions are equally hard, just for very different reasons.
Right. If you're young and you don't have a career and you really don't have any focus, maybe you don't even have a place to live, you don't have a job, let alone a career, you don't even have a job, and you're weighing this decision like, should I keep my baby? Should I not? What should I do? What are my options? That's where you come into play.
Right. And that's really what our program is about. And that's the message we really want to get out there, is for especially women that really don't know what they want to do and are facing all these various struggles. That's what we're here to help them figure out. We can connect them to an array of resources in the communities to help solve all those problems you just talked about, to focus on housing or employment or schooling or whatever their barrier is in life, and especially to parenting. We don't ever want someone to place their child for adoption just because they don't have a job or just because they don't have a place to live. If they want to be a parent and they're pregnant, then we want to help them do that. If they come to us and say they would love to parent in the future, but they know at this moment placing is the best decision for them and for baby, then we're going to help them do that. We're going to help them figure it out regardless of what they decide to do.
So throughout the years, you see or you hear or you read that teen pregnancy is on the rise. The numbers are astronomical. It's through the roof. Abstinence doesn't work. Abstinence-only education isn't effective, blah, blah, blah. You hear both sides of the coin. You hear both sides of the issue. Mm-hmm. And it's not an easy one. Right. It's very volatile.
Yes.
We can cause lots of fights over this discussion, I'm sure. And I'm sure many have arisen out of this discussion. But ultimately, the decision lies within the woman, the girl,
Right.
oftentimes child herself.
Often. But we also see women who are in their mid to late 20s, in their 30s, sometimes 40s, that are faced with the same decisions. We have women that come who are currently parenting children, who are trying to figure out if they can parent another child at this time.
Because they already have their hands full, so to speak. They already
Sometimes.
have too many. And I mean, when I was a kid, it was not uncommon to hear somebody that had 13, 15. I remember one family, 18 kids.
Right.
I had one.
Right.
I had one and I was done.
Right.
And that was challenging enough unto itself. I can only imagine that the different situations, the different scenarios that you're facing and discussing with these women on a daily basis. You just mentioned a moment ago, do they have the resources? Do they have the wherewithal to maybe parent another child?
Right.
So we're already talking multiples of children. Oftentimes I would imagine there's some domestic violence going on. So now you have multiple compounds of issues going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been with this man for 25 years and he gets more abusive by the day. I'm pregnant again. I've already got 4. What am I going to do?
Right. And crisis intervention and safety assessment is the first thing that I'm going to do in any situation. If that is the case, we have resources for that. My sister's place is part of Catholic Charities that we could easily refer to if they were in danger in any of those types of scenarios. And it still comes down to, does she want to parent this child? And if she does, then that's what we're going to help her do and help her to figure it out. If she doesn't think that she can and wants to place, then we help her figure that out and figure out, what type of family and what type of life she wants for her child.
So how do you go about this? Do you try to put them in different shoes and say, okay, here's what your life is going to be like in 6 months. Here's what your life is going to be like in 15 months. Here's what your life is going to be like in 5 years, 10 years.
Yes, that's what we do.
So you're basically role playing?
A lot of the times we can also connect a pregnant woman with a woman who's already placed. We have birth moms that placed in the past that are willing to talk about their experience, so they can talk to someone else who's actually done it and see what their experience was like and how they feel now, and help. That often helps. We a lot of times are planning for both at the same time. We're planning for parenting and we're planning for adoption. A woman may say the whole time she wants to place her baby for adoption, but when that baby gets here, there's no way that she's going to do it. A woman may say the whole time she wants to parent, and then baby gets here and along the way has figured out that this is not what she wants to do. So, until they sign that actual adoption consent, they're mom, and that's how we treat them. And the decision making is in their hands.
So the thing that I can gather is that the woman is not going to be pushed in either direction, because ultimately that decision has to be hers.
Correct.
Is it more often than not single moms coming through there? Is it couples?
I can honestly say that every woman that I've worked with is different and unique, but we've had situations where it's been boyfriend and girlfriend. We've had situations where they were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time, placed a child for adoption, and are now married, are now together, having their own children.
Now, how does that work out? Do they then want to revisit what they did X amount of years or months ago and say, hey, wait a minute, we know that when we were 16, we were in here and we did this and this was the outcome, but now we're 22 and we have one child already and we'd like to get back the other one?
Well, that's something we talk about prior to signing consents, because in Arizona, there is no going back. The minute you sign that consent, it's irrevocable. And that's why we go through all of this counseling leading up to that decision, because we want to make sure that they know and understand, what they're doing when they sign that paper.
Because you've heard in the past before, you said it's irrevocable here in Arizona.
Correct.
But I remember in the news 15, 20 years ago, baby was with this family for a couple of years, and all of a sudden birth parents, I forget if it was the father or the mother, came back and said, changed my mind. And the court actually plucked that baby out of that home and gave it to the people that child had never seen before, and your heart was just breaking.
Right. And there are states that have like a wait period where they can come back and change their mind. The other piece to that, and the story I believe you're talking about, it was a birth father who was not notified of his rights, and the court found that he was not adequately notified of his rights at the time of the adoption took place. In Arizona, we have to notify and do our due diligence to locate birth father, let him know that mom is planning on placing this baby for adoption, and he has the right to then either participate in the adoption process or file paternity paperwork, which halts the adoption until DNA testing and all that stuff is done, and then it becomes a custody case with the court if he wants to parent.
Oh, golly.
So here and with our agency, you know, we really respect the rights of dads just as much as moms, and we really want them to be involved as much as they are willing to.
And back to your question too about, you know, the 16-year-old mom, you know, who later, you know, 5-10 years later marries birth dad. You know, our experience has been with talking with moms who maybe placed and then ended up with birth dad and had, you know, children after that or a family after that, is, you know, that they made the best decision at that moment in time. That's been our experience. You know, I'm sure that there are cases, you know, otherwise, but for us, you know, really, they feel like in that moment they made that best decision, you know, and that was just maybe economics of their life at that moment that they just
or maybe
couldn't be
youth.
there.
Oftentimes
Absolutely.
youth, I would think also, it's like, wait a minute, I'm 16 years old or I'm 17 years old. I haven't even graduated college, high school, let alone college. I don't really have a real job. I have a minimum wage job, whoop-de-doo. How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to take care of a baby? How am I going to take care of diapers? I mean, the other day not the other day, but probably in the last month, there was an article that came out that to raise a child from birth to college the cost was like $250,000.
Right.
You saw that article as well, or that story?
I did.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. So if you have two, that's $500,000
Right.
to raise two kids to the age of 18, I believe it was. And it wasn't even through college. So don't even throw college on top of that cost.
I know.
So you're looking at a $250,000 basically just to get your kid to the point where they can drive a car.
Right. And many of the women that I've worked with are very insightful about themselves. And I've had multiple women say, I'm too selfish right now. I cannot put somebody else's needs before mine. And it's not always about going out and partying and drinking, which is what a lot of people think about women who place babies for adoption. Often it's about, I want to finish high school and I want to go to college and I have these plans for myself. And right now that's my focus. And when I have a child, I want to give that child all of my attention. But right now I can't do that. And I'm not willing to not go to school in order to do those things.
But don't you have to kind of give credit where credit is due and actually admire that young woman for even thinking that I am not going to be good at this right now. This is not the time for me.
Absolutely.
That to me is huge.
It's amazing. And it's amazing that, you know, a lot of these women that are young or that are in very vulnerable circumstances are able to look at themselves and say those things. Because a lot of people cannot say, hey, I'm selfish and I want to focus on me right now.
Yeah, I'd rather spend, you know, money going and doing these things than putting it towards diapers and formula at this point in my life. You know, at some point I want to be a mom or, you know,
just
parent,
not now.
But right now my focus is elsewhere. And it's hugely insightful and really something that we respect a lot to be able to say.
Joining me this morning is Jennifer Morris, who you just heard talking. I'm sorry, that was Alicia. Sorry, Alicia. Program manager for pregnancy, parenting, and adoption. Special programs that they have with Catholic Charities. And Jennifer Morris is the pregnancy counselor. How often, Jennifer, do you have people come in and say, I can't make a decision either way? They do have to ultimately make a decision, correct?
Right. And part of that is not making a decision is actually making a decision to parent. Because you're a parent. That child is growing inside you. You are the mother. If you don't make a decision, then you're actually choosing to parent. And
you can't push somebody over the fence because, you know, this is a life-altering decision no matter how you cut it.
Right.
This decision that they're going to make is going to affect the rest of their lives. If they place, then it's always there in the back of their heads. I wonder how my baby is doing. Yep. Did they get a good family? Are they doing okay? Did everything work out all right? You know, could I have done better? You know,
right.
and then on the other side of the coin, well, I did the parenting, I'm not doing so well, or hey, I did the parenting and I did pretty good.
Right, exactly. And, a part of the piece about if you place and always wondering how your child's doing, with Catholic Charities, there's various forms of adoption now. Back in the day, all adoptions were closed. They were very secretive. Birth mom had baby and probably never even saw their baby, and baby was swept away and given to this family. It doesn't operate like that anymore.
But you said it's that once the decision is made to place, there's no going back. So once that baby is adopted out, there's no way, once that baby is adopted, there's no way that birth mom or birth dad, once the paperwork is done, can change their mind.
They can't undo the adoption, but they can still have communication with their child and the adoptive family and know how they're doing and have visits and exchange letters and pictures.
Does that have to happen, or is that ultimately up to the adopted family?
It's ultimately up to the birth parents.
To begin with, in the beginning, part of the conversation in pregnancy counseling is matching. We have a mutual selection process in our adoption program. That means that both birth parents and adoptive families are kind of talking about qualities in each other. Mm-hmm. They'll also agree on a communication agreement, how often they're going to have maybe visits, how often they're going to do pictures and letters. After the adoption happens, it will be, as you're saying, up to an adoptive family. Their mom and dad, they get to make those decisions.
Oh, but I thought Jennifer just said that it's ultimately up to the birth mother.
In the beginning.
In the
beginning. While she's still mom and she's still pregnant and we're working through pregnancy counseling, both sides are going to come together and agree on what communication will look like.
Okay, then something must have gotten lost here in the conversation, because I was speaking, once the paperwork is done, right, the adoption has taken place, and can they still have the family visits and the photo albums and all that stuff? And you said it was ultimately up to the birth mom, but it's really up to the adopted family if they want to continue the
communication agreement is filed with the court at the time of finalization of the adoption. So both parties have agreed on it. The court has seen it and also approved it. But the thing that we talk about a lot with our families is, if in 5 years a birth parent is maybe not in a healthy place and a visit wouldn't be advisable, then that's the point in which the families could say, you know what, this is probably not the best time to have a visit. Maybe we need to move it back, or maybe we need to have a counseling session first. That's what's really important about our services. We provide lifelong services for both parties, both our adoptive families and our birth moms. We're here forever. And ever and ever, in order to help them through that process.
If, for example, let's say that we're talking about a family that adopted a baby, and these visits and this lifelong contact with the birth parents, does that continue forever, or can it be severed at any time?
And that's the point where it is up to the adoptive family. And usually in communication agreements with visits, it'll be until age 5 or 8. And at that point, the child has an input, and that's put in the communication agreement. If child is saying, I don't want to see those people anymore, then the parents get to say, we're not going to see you. We'll still send you letters and pictures so you know how he's doing or she's doing. Mm-hmm. But visits are not, a good thing right now. Maybe the child's confused. Maybe they just don't want to, whatever it is. But it can always come back. And that's also a point where the adoptive family can contact us and say, you know what, my child's really struggling with understanding the adoption or knowing how to interact with their birth parents. Can you help us out? And of course we can, and we do.
And that's the kind of services that you guys provide for life, because, it's
tricky.
It is tricky, and it's also confusing to a child.
Yep.
It's like, wait a minute, how many? Oh, I have 2 moms. I have 2 dads. This is cool. In some instances, it can work out to your benefit. And other times, it's just big confusion.
Right.
It can be. It can be.
So you have separate counselors for birth parents, the adoptive families. There's never any pressure to choose adoption. It's entirely up to, do you make strong suggestion, though? If you can see that this young woman is, or this woman, period, doesn't matter. She doesn't have to be young. We just assume that young means irresponsible and that they can't handle it. But I've seen some young kids that are a lot tougher than some people in their 40s.
Right.
So let's erase that stereotype. Let's just say that the woman, is not going to be a good parent. You
Right.
just know.
Right.
What do you do?
I ask a lot of really hard questions. I am pretty straightforward and direct and open with a lot of things. So if a mom is telling me she can afford to pay her rent and pay her electricity and her phone bill and buy diapers and formula, then we're going to budget and we're going to plan. And she needs to show me. And it's not about showing it to me. It's about showing it to her. Like, you're telling me you have $500 a month and you can pay your $450 rent and have $50 left for food and diapers and formula. How is that going to happen? You know, if these are all the resources you have, then how's it going to happen? And so it's about asking the hard questions and not being afraid to do that.
And still, though, I think that the only person that can really make that decision is that mom. And we can guide and offer probing questions that maybe would be a little more thoughtful than they'd be on their own. But, you know, unless there's a safety concern, that's a pretty big glaring safety concern, then they need to make the choices that they need to make. And it would be unethical and unfair for us to try and guide in any direction. And that's
so
really
you guys have to
important
remain
us.
neutral.
We really do.
And that is so important that people know that you guys remain neutral. You're not going to, you know, push, sway.
No, and our expertise really lies in decision-making counseling. You know, those women who are out there who are facing an unplanned pregnancy, the ones that are saying, I don't know what I want to do, those are the women we really want to reach through this conversation and through other conversations. Because the myth is that they have to kind of know the plan before they go and talk to somebody. And maybe in some instances that's true, but definitely not with us. We kind of have that expertise in walking down both paths and doing concurrent planning and making it understandable at whatever level we need to.
So if somebody listening today could use your services, could use an ear to talk to, could use some guidance, how do they get in touch with you?
We have a 24-hour 888 number that is available. It is 1-888-818-4445. Our particular Catholic Charities serves all of Maricopa County, and then like Kingman, Havasu, Flagstaff, Mojave County, Coconino County, Yavapai County. So pretty much all of Maricopa County and north. And that 888 number, like I said, is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, staffed by a live counselor. They will talk to a real life person.
So they're not going to leave a message and get a call back later.
That should not be happening. And if they had to leave a message, we call back within 15 minutes. That's very rare, but you know, sometimes people have to run to the restroom or something like that. So yes, it's definitely staffed by a live person, local here in Arizona. Some of the other
So you're not
resources,
calling an 888 number in Chicago
exactly.
or something.
You got it.
Now, what about dads? Is there separate counseling for dads?
We love dads. We really love to have dads involved. We want dads to be involved. We want them to assert their rights if they want to. Nothing should be a secret. You know, our goal would be that they're a part of the process and working mutually with mom, even if they're not together to make a decision. But sometimes they may need to have separate counselors, and we have that availability as well.
When you say they need to have separate counselors, is that because there's so much contention between the two parties that, you know, okay, we're going to give mom her counseling and dad his counseling?
It could be that they need kind of a mediator to help. Maybe they both agree that adoption's the best choice, but they maybe disagree on some of the pieces, or what they would want in a family, or how that would really look. And so we really believe that both of those parties would need an advocate on their own, and maybe have them come together and help come to a mutually agreed upon solution.
So let me ask you this, Jennifer. The standard thinking is that most unplanned pregnancies are young women.
Right.
Teens.
Right.
Is that what you're seeing, or is that just a myth?
That's a myth. I do have young women and teens, but I also have women who are in their late 20s and their 30s. I have an appointment with a woman next week who's 44. So it's everybody.
Married couples have placed. Some could be due to, again, economics, a sign of the times. Or maybe, you know, their plan was, you know, not to start a family at this point in time, and maybe later on that's what they wanted. It
so mostly then it's
gamut.
economics, really, for the most part.
Timing and economics, I think.
Right.
You know, what goals they have for themselves. I think that's another myth. A lot of times we think of irresponsibility or moms being younger because of irresponsibility, but sometimes, you know, they just want to work through some goals that they have for their life. And a baby right at this moment in time is not part of that goal or that plan or it would impede them getting to that end goal. So, they recognize how important it is, to
Okay,
maybe
so
make
I
a
have
decision.
I have 4 more years of med school before I can start my own family, and med school is awfully expensive.
Yeah. Right.
And that's my dream, is I want to get through med school. So
We've seen it before with an attorney, somebody going through law school. I mean, it absolutely could be exactly what you just said.
Yes.
Wow.
We have another birth mom who's now a master licensed social worker after placing her baby. So, it's when I say that every woman I work with, whether they choose to place or choose to parent, are unique, I can't stress how much that's true.
well, how active or how involved in the adoptive family is the birth mother in making that decision?
Well, we really encourage our birth moms to have a match meeting with the adoptive family. If a mom comes to us during pregnancy early enough, then we'll have a match meeting sometime in their last trimester, and they can get as close to the adoptive family as both parties are willing to get close to each other. We have an adoption that happened where the adoptive family and the birth parent, they visit to each other's houses. They text each other almost every single day. She'll come and stay the weekend at their house, and they'll go up there and stay at her house. So they are super close, know everything about each other, have what's truly an open adoption. So the level of contact and the level of how much they know each other is really up to them, and how comfortable they both are, revealing those things about each other.
So that's an open adoption.
And I mentioned earlier, it's mutual selection. So we would never have a birth mom say, I wanted a really open adoption, and then an adoptive family who says they want some semi-closed, semi-open, more closed adoption. That's part of what we do too, is help bring those qualities, of what they're looking for in each side together, so that there's a good match. Not, this contentious, I wanted really open, I wanted more closed relationship. We really want it to be.
Explain what a closed adoption is.
At Catholic Charities, we would do a closed adoption only at the request of a birth parent. And that would really mean that maybe she looks at profiles of adoptive families and picks of families, but maybe not. She may just say, I don't feel comfortable knowing anything about the adoptive family. I trust you. I trust your agency. And, I really know that placing is what I want to do. And I believe that you're going to make a good match for baby.
So they have absolutely no involvement in the adoptive process.
For us, we would still ask that the family would send in pictures and letters. They would send it to the agency. And we would let birth mom know that those would be waiting at the agency if she ever changed her mind, to come pick them up and view those pictures. And we really try to talk with our moms about doing a little bit more of a semi-open relationship, that is really, we really focus on, especially at the point where a baby's born, we focus on the baby who's now 18 and asking questions and wanting to know about their birth family. So, because we see adult adoptees come back and ask those questions. So we look at it from that perspective as well, and try to look at the whole triad of birth parent, adoptive family, and baby.
So we hear oftentimes too that the more horrific side of unplanned, unwanted pregnancy, and we've seen it throughout the last 15 years or so with prom mom and different instances like that. There are safe havens, correct?
Safe havens are wonderful. They're great to keep babies safe, and to make sure that that women out in the community and people out in the community know that that's a really great option. But we also know that you don't get to a lot of follow-up. If you leave a baby at a safe haven location, you may not ever know what happens to baby. And you might just be wondering, is that 2-year-old I just crossed on the street, could that have been my child that I left at safe haven? And we feel like pregnancy counseling and talking about placing for adoption, that our options at least allow kind of a window into how baby's going to be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and what baby will look like. And you'll have a say in, what the family will look like, what the family enjoys doing, things like that, whereas safe haven is a lot of unknown.
So this here, at least you have some sort of decision-making process with whom your child will grow up with. You also have the counseling service both to you now and for the rest of your life.
Right.
So safe haven is great by all means. I mean, we're not we're not maligning Safe Haven whatsoever.
Not at all.
Because
Absolutely right.
the alternative to Safe Haven and you guys is something I don't even want to think about.
Right.
So just please don't mistake what we were just saying about Safe Haven as not being right for you. Maybe it is, but we're just offering you a different alternative with Catholic Charities.
It's a little more proactive. It's a little bit more, you get more control and more say in what's going to happen with baby. The outcome of, not parenting is the same, but you at least won't necessarily have to wonder.
888-818-4445 is the toll-free 24/7 line. You can get access to counseling, and it is a bona fide real person answering the phone.
It is.
A
In
living, breathing
Arizona.
human in Arizona, which is
Yes.
great.
Yes.
You're not calling a call center in
Who knows where?
India. You're calling a real person here in Arizona. And Catholic Charities, through the PPM program, right? PP&A. So that is Pregnancy, Parenting, and Adoption. The PP&A program is for Maricopa County and basically the I-17 corridor.
Pretty much.
Pretty
Right.
much,
North,
right?
east, and west, yes.
Yeah. So you got to love that. And if for some reason what we're talking about today is not what you need, Catholic Charities has a variety of programs. And I'm sure that if you are in need of anything, something, whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's unplanned pregnancy, whether it's poverty assistance, whatever it may be, Catholic Charities can help. But the number to call is 888-818-4445. If you or someone you know is facing an unplanned pregnancy, call now.
Please call us.
Yeah, you guys want to chit-chat.
We do. We do.
So do you have any final thoughts here today?
I just really want, moms and their support system to reach out to us as soon as possible, because all we can do is help, even if it's just connecting to a resource. That's what we're here to do.
I forgot to ask you this, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Okay.
Is there any cost involved?
Never to our pregnancy clients and their support system. There's no cost.
None. Not
None.
a dollar.
Not one.
Not the court filing papers, nothing.
Nope. Nothing.
Do you guys ever need volunteers, or do you guys ever need any kind of anything at all from the community other than, hey, if you need help, call us?
The agency is always accepting volunteers, and they're really moving towards incorporating volunteers into all of the programs more. So absolutely contact Catholic Charities.
CatholicCharities.org, I believe, is
CatholicCharitiesAZ.org. Yep.
CatholicCharitiesAZ.org is the website. You can go on there,
Yep, you
and
can.
there should be a volunteer tab where you can
Got it.
search do a site map and find it. But there should be a volunteer tab right on the website, CatholicCharitiesAZ.org.
Yep.
The number again, if you or someone you know is facing an unplanned pregnancy, 888-818-4445. I think more often than not, it's probably this feeling of despair. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What are my parents going to say? I think that's probably the biggest fear because, as a young girl growing up, you're told by your parents, if you get arrested or pregnant, don't call me. Lose my phone number.
Right.
So if that day ever comes, you're like, oh my, what am I going to do now?
Right. And that's exactly what we're here for. What am I going to do now? We're here to help answer that question.
And that's where you're going to hold somebody's hand all the way through the process, correct?
Correct.
Does it matter if it's the first trimester or last trimester?
No, we get calls from the hospital and mom has already had baby. So
Oh, then what do you do?
then it's
do a
the
lot of
same
work in a
thing,
short
but
amount of
it's
time.
it's a lot more compacted, but it's the same process.
Yep.
Yes.
Wow, the hospitals will actually call you up and say, "Hey, we have a baby and a mom, and
And
come on down."
In those instances, we utilize what we call receiving homes, and they are just a neutral location of these wonderful stay-at-home moms who will just care for baby while we're doing all of this counseling. It's a neutral location. No final decisions are being made. Nothing is final. They're not signing paperwork. It's just a time to relax, breathe, and go through some decision making at that point.
Have you ever had children?
I do. I have two.
And you?
I have two.
Okay, so then you know that those hormones and those emotions,
yes.
everything is running on overdrive.
Yes. Yes.
So
The last thing we want is for somebody to make a decision in the spur of a moment. We want things to go slowly.
yeah, because
and
you're
calmly.
really under duress.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the worst time to make a decision is
Yes.
when you're emotional and you feel pressured and you're under duress. That is like the last time you want to
Yep.
make a life-changing decision.
And that's what's so amazing about those receiving homes is that is absolutely no pressure. You could call at any moment and say, you know what, I want to parent. Let's go pick up baby, and we do it. So it's an amazing, just no pressure way to relax and be able to think through those decisions.
Right. And to be honest, even if a mom is looking at me and saying, I want to place my baby for adoption, but I know 5 seconds ago she was bawling her eyes out, I'm not going to let her sign consents until I know that she is sure and she's not making it out of emotion or panic or duress or anything like that.
It is an emotional time.
Yes.
Absolutely. If it wasn't, we'd be worried. Honestly.
And
if it
say
wasn't
that.
emotional and it wasn't hard and we weren't all crying together,
right,
then we would be worried.
Okay,
Right.
so remember, keep this number handy, 888-818-4445. If you or someone you know is facing an unplanned pregnancy, please call. Catholic Charities in here this morning with Jennifer Morris, pregnancy counselor. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
Alicia O'Loughlin, the program manager for PPM, that's Pregnancy, Parenting, and Adoption with Catholic Charities Community Services. The number, if you or someone you know is in need, please, 888-818-4445. Ladies, I thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by Valley Focus. I hope to see you again.
Great.